Vlad Dracula, feared ruler, called the Impaler. He is the subject of many myths and gruesome stories. But how did he actually get his reputation? Let's look at Hungary in the late 15th century. Once again, there was a war with the Ottoman Empire, and so the Hungarian king Matthias Corvinus gathered all his country's army commanders. Dracula, who was experienced in war, was given a special mission. His campaign against the Sultan was to begin, of all places, in the Transylvanian Saxon city of Kronstadt. There, people feared the prince because decades before he had many citizens staked, slain, or burned to death, because the powerful and wealthy city council had previously supported a conspiracy of Wallachian nobles against Dracula. But the fear of the Sultan was greater, and so the people of Kronstadt decided to help Dracula this time on one condition: he had to repent for his misdeeds and ask for Christian forgiveness. But what was he accused of? The cruelty attributed to him could be found in the fate of his family. His father, Prince of Wallachia, was betrayed and slain by his own nobles. Vlad's elder brother was blinded and buried alive. Dracula struggled for control with these enemies for years. For a supposed reconciliation, he invited the nobles and their families to celebrate Easter. There he took revenge and had them staked. He also took revenge on Kronstadt, whose councils had long supported his enemies. He had the merchants and wagon drivers of these councils impaled. Their scouts were probably burned alive. Dracula had their villages around Kronstadt burned, and many of their inhabitants were slain by his soldiers, and not a few were allegedly impaled. From Dracula's point of view, the Saxons from Transylvania spread exaggerated stories about his deeds. If they could not defeat him with the sword, they tried with the pen to destroy his reputation with the Hungarian king and the Holy Father in Rome. An example of their accusations: he impales his subjects indiscriminately and washes his hands with human blood before eating. Vlad's crusade against an overwhelming Turkish opponent gives rise to further stories about his atrocities and consolidates the image of the tyrant Dracula. He had beheaded or impaled thousands and sent sacks full of severed heads, noses and ears to the court of the Hungarian king. Legendary was his nighttime attack on a Turkish camp where the Sultan was in the early summer of 1462. The daring attack failed, but the Turks' losses were reportedly heavy and they soon withdrew. However, to appease the Turks, the Hungarian king Matthias Corvinus had him arrested and imprisoned for 12 years, first in Visegrad Castle and later in Buda. When the new war with the Ottoman Empire escalated in 1475, the dreaded tyrant Dracula, as an experienced army commander, was now needed at the front. For Vlad, it must have seemed that he was just good enough for the fight for kingdom and Christianity. Vlad Dracula was victorious a few weeks later and became the Prince of Wallachia again. But he no longer received help from the other Christian powers. The Turks, Tatars, and Wallachians he had sent into Ottoman exile surrounded him with 3 armies in the middle of winter and killed him along with almost all his remaining soldiers. In fact, with this, Dracula became a war hero. Because of his successes against the Ottoman Empire, European nobles boasted of being his descendants, but the tyrant also remained unforgotten. Centuries later, Vlad's revenge on the Transylvanian Saxons was to succeed after all. Although he himself became a blood-sucking vampire in literature and art, the region of Transylvania is now also considered a land of bloodthirsty vampires. And even scholarship can't compete with that.